prescriptions that their doctors give them. We know that 6 die of lack of health care every year. We know because there's an $88 billion medical debt, the top 5 pharmaceutical companies last year alone made $80 billion in. And we know that 1/3 of America's workers live on less than $15 an hour, and half of them cannot afford a place to live. And we know that 1.3 million Americans are rationing their insulin. And we know that in every other advanced democracy, they have universal health care. They don't have people putting up GoFundMe pages on the internet in order to pay for life-saving operations for their children and other loved ones. I have doctors in this country who say to me, now 2 of them have said, I don't even know why I bother to practice medicine anymore. I tell people what they need, they come in, I tell them, but the people had enough, their insurance covered the doctor's visit, but the insurance won't cover the medicine. Or the insurance won't cover the treatment. Dr. Virginia Dooley in Detroit said to me, the most common question I used to get from patients was when I would tell them a treatment, the most common question I used to get was, what are the side effects? Today, the most common question is, what will it cost? Mm-hmm. And the only reason we don't have universal health care are these same people who act like they care. And they care, but they care within the construct of their unwillingness to challenge the underlying corporate forces that make the return of all this human suffering inevitable season after season, year after year, election after election. Mm-hmm. And so they will tell you that the reason we don't have universal health care is because it's complicated. And I'm here to share with you that we all ought to say what we all know. No, it's not complicated, it's just corrupt. And people are rationing their insulin because of the greed of the pharmaceutical companies. There are carcinogens in our food because of big food and big ag. There are chemicals in our pesticide that hurt children's brains because of big chemical companies. We are continuing, and you know, I don't want to get personal around it, but it should be said that there's a president who calls himself the climate president. Really? So the climate president, because of the healthy investments in green energy that are in the Inflation Reduction Act, and I want to give credit where credit is due. However, that same president also approved the Willow Project, an $8 billion ConocoPhillips oil extraction project on the North Slopes of Alaska. And you put that together with the fact that he's actually given more oil drilling permits than even Trump did. Oh. And all of the effects, all of the benefits of the clean energy investments are nullified. This is what I most resent. They act like they think we're stupid. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's what I most resent. I don't like condescending men. And when an entire political system reflects that kind of patriarchal condescension, you better believe it. It's time for a woman, it's time for millions of women to say very elegantly and very, very wisely and very, very compassionately, that shit really needs to stop now. But it is not easy. It is not easy, actually, because you ask, well, who am I supposed to vote for? Do I vote for Cornell? Do I vote for Marianne? Do I vote for Biden? I'm not saying it's an easy question, but I am saying this. I have become convinced, or I would not be here, that the status quo will not disrupt itself. Nope. It is absurd. And, you know, I'm a white woman, so I can only know as much as you can know from without a system. But I can tell you this, given that Black Lives Matter was the biggest protest movement in the history of the United States, it really says a lot that there has not been one serious bipartisan police reform legislative bill passed yet. No, something is really, 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 really wrong, and they are not going to change it. Nope. And I've learned as a candidate just what we all know, as I said, what the resistance is. However, I want to go back to the first thing I said. There are more of us than there are them. Yeah. But not if we keep going along, not if we continue our codependent relationship with everything from the Democratic Party to the entire political establishment. If they say that the Democratic Party is not even going to have debates? Really? Because the Republicans had debates the other night. Did you notice that? They had debates. It's very weird about the Republicans and the Democrats. The Democrats have the more egalitarian policies but an almost more elitist relationship with its own constituency. The
Mhm.
Republicans have the elitist policies, but a weirdly more egalitarian relationship with its own constituency. Republican voters don't say, well, I'll do whatever the RNC says. And we shouldn't just do whatever the DNC says. So I like to just say a little civics lesson here about the part the political parties are supposed to play. Political parties are supposed to stand in the background until the voters have decided. It's this radical concept called democracy. It's this radical concept where the voters are supposed to decide who the candidate is, and at that point, the political parties come in. But many people, I've had an experience here that I have almost every day. Somebody comes up to me and says, "Oh, my kids love you. My 20-year-old told me all about you." What is that about? It is a phenomenon. I'll tell you what it is. In the New York Times poll, I'm only 7 points behind President Biden with Gen Z. He's at 34, I'm at 27, and Bobby Kennedy is at 13. Why is it? First of all, it does have to do with the fact I stand for universal health care, tuition-free college and tech school, which we had until the 70s. Every other advanced democracy has universal health care. We should cancel those college loans because they should never have existed to begin with.
Amen.
That was vulture capitalism at its worst. Let's look to the kids, particularly people of color, who were desperate to spread their wings and self-actualize. Ooh, I bet we could get some money from them. They know that there's great profit wherever there is human despair.
Mm-hmm.
And we should have free childcare as in other countries, and we should have paid family leave as in other countries, and we should have guaranteed housing, and we should have guaranteed living wage as in every other country. We have been trained to limit our political imagination. We've been trained to expect too little. We've been trained to just go along. That's the first thing that a woman has to do. She has to learn to say, "No, thank you, darling. We're going to do it differently now." Not with anger, but with sisterhood. And we're simply not going to stand for it. But when we say something like shut it down, we have to know what we're talking about. And it has to be on the primary levels. It has to be on the primary levels for congressional, has to be on the primary levels for the Senate, and it has to be on the primary level for the presidential candidate. Otherwise, nothing is going to seriously change. And the corporatists will continue, and the Republicans will do nothing except a nosedive for our democracy. And the corporatist Democrats will look over a managed decline of our democracy. Yeah. We are headed for the iceberg. The Republicans headed right there. The corporatist Democrats more slowly, and will hit it at another angle. As in every system, there is nothing like the power of women to say, no, we're actually going to turn this ship around. So it's early in the campaign season. I'm just grateful to have the opportunity to be here to talk about these things. And I'm not saying even in terms of my campaign, asking for your vote, but I am grateful for your listening today. We are early in the season, and I am asking you to consider that there's something very, very wrong when CNN will not have someone on. And MSNBC will not have someone on. Do not kid yourself. MSNBC and CNN are for the Democratic Party, no different than Fox is for the GOP.
I know, right?
And it's wrong. It's standing in the way of our democracy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when Triana was talking, she was mentioning my quote from my book, A Return to Love. And why has that quote struck a nerve? That quote has struck a nerve in this country, really in many places, because it speaks to the possibility of self-actualization. It speaks to the possibility that anyone should be able to spread their wings. It believes that it speaks to the idea that there is divine power and potential, unlimited divine potential within every human being. And we all want to be reminded of that because it then gives us permission to live it. Before I leave, I just want to point out that that's what the Declaration of Independence says too. That is the message of the Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal, and that all men are given the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They didn't use words like self-actualization then, but that's what was said. And those 56 men who signed that declaration were risking their lives to imbue the founding of our country with the space of that ideal. That's where it began. A radical possibility, radical then and radical now. But no one in this room needs to be reminded what went along with that. 41 of the 56 signers were slave owners.
Mm-hmm.
That dichotomy and that struggle has always been with us, and it is with us now. It is the struggle between those of us who really get, there's something really profound about anybody being able to do it, anybody being able to thrive, anybody being able to spread their wings, anybody having the shackles of material disadvantage and even emotional, spiritual, and psychological disadvantage removed so that they can become all that God created them to potentially be. But there have also been forces throughout our history. They were here at the beginning. To be honest, they're here now. For their own economic and ideological purposes, have no intention whatsoever of seeing those principles actualized. But if you look at the trajectory of American history, we have pushed them back. Every single generation lives out its iteration of that story and of that struggle. But we responded to slavery with abolition, and we responded to the institutional suppression of women with the women's suffragist movement. We responded to the first Gilded Age with the establishment of organized labor. We responded to segregation in the American South with the civil rights movement. It's simply our turn. It's simply the next stage of things. It's simply taking where they got it right and making it better because the job was not completed. No former generation owes us anything. It's our turn now. It's our turn now. And that is what it means to me to say we will not stop. We cannot stop. Yes, they passed the Voting Rights Act, but they've also gutted it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they passed the Civil Rights Act, and now it's time to go forward the conversation about economics, reparations, etc. Yes, they passed the 19th Amendment. Now it's time to pass the ERA. Yes, there was the establishment of organized labor, and now there's a regeneration of organized labor because it's been suppressed. And if I may submit to you, it's time for a mother in the White House, and you can take that however you want to. It is time for a woman who comes up from the conversation that is in this room. Enough is enough, but it will not happen if we continue to elect the status quo. They're not going to give it to us, girls. They're not going to give it to us. And it was also pointed out that this isn't even, listen, Betty Ford, she was a Republican. And she fought for the ERA. Yep. This is not about left versus right. This is not about Democrat versus Republican. That's all a ruse. The real dichotomy in America today is between the powerful and the powerless, between those who have capital and easy access to capital and those who are simply struggling to survive. Not every rich person in this country is a greedy bastard. Not every poor person is holy and pure. So we must not make this about personalities. We must make it about principles. It's not about people. You don't want to demonize people. It is about systems, however. But those systems will not change unless we change them. My message to all of you is, come on, girls, let's do this. Thank you.